The White House stands as one of the most recognizable buildings in the world, serving not only as the official residence and workplace of the President of the United States, but also as a powerful symbol of American democracy, executive power, and national identity. Located at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest in Washington, D.C., this neoclassical mansion has been home to every U.S. president since John Adams in 1800, witnessing more than 2 centuries of American history unfold within its walls. The building itself comprises 6 stories and approximately 55,000 square feet of floor space. It contains 132 rooms, including 16 family guest rooms, 1 main kitchen, 1 diet kitchen, 1 family kitchen, and 35 bathrooms. The property sits on 18 acres of land, featuring the iconic north and south lawns, the Rose Garden, the Jacqueline Kennedy Garden, and numerous other outdoor spaces that have hosted everything from state dinners to Easter egg rolls. Beyond its physical structure, the White House represents the heart of American executive power. It houses the offices of the president and their most senior advisors, serves as the venue for critical policy decisions, and functions as a stage for diplomatic ceremonies that shape international relations. The building has witnessed the signing of landmark legislation, hosted world leaders, and served as the backdrop for moments of both triumph and tragedy in American history. The story of the White House is inseparable from the story of America itself. Its construction involved both free laborers and enslaved people, reflecting the contradictions of a young nation founded on principles of liberty while perpetuating the institution of slavery. Its walls have been rebuilt after being burned by foreign invaders, demonstrating American resilience. Its rooms have been continually modified and modernized, mirroring the nation's evolution and growth. Today, the White House receives approximately 6,000 visitors daily and hosts more than 100 receptions and meetings each month. It operates simultaneously as a private home, a world-class museum, and a fully functioning office building. The West Wing houses the Oval Office and the offices of the President's closest advisors, while the East Wing contains offices for the First Lady and her staff. The residence, occupying the central and largest portion of the building, serves as the living quarters for the First Family. The story of the White House begins not with architecture or construction, but with one of the most contentious political debates in early American history. Where should the nation's capital be located? This question dominated political discourse in the years immediately following the Revolutionary War and the ratification of the Constitution in 1788. During the Revolutionary War and the years under the Articles of Confederation, Congress had no permanent home. The Continental Congress met in various cities including Philadelphia, Baltimore, Lancaster, York, Princeton, Annapolis, Trenton, and New York City. This nomadic existence reflected both the practical challenges of wartime and the political reality that no state wanted to cede too much power to a central government by hosting its permanent seat. The debate over the capital's location revealed deep sectional divisions within the young republic. Northern states, particularly New York and Pennsylvania, argued for a northern location. They pointed to the region's commercial importance, established infrastructure, and cultural sophistication. New York City had served as the temporary capital since 1785 and had even been renovated specifically to house the new federal government under the Constitution. The city had invested significant resources in creating Federal Hall, where George Washington took his oath of office as the first president in 1789. Southern states, however, viewed a northern capital with suspicion and alarm. They feared that locating the seat of government in the north would give that region undue influence over national policy, particularly regarding slavery, trade policy, and the distribution of federal resources. Virginia, the largest and most populous state at the time, along with other southern states including Maryland, the Carolinas, and Georgia, advocated strongly for a more central or southern location. Washington approached this responsibility with characteristic thoroughness. He had long believed that the Potomac River region was ideal for the nation's capital. His reasons were both practical and strategic. The Potomac was navigable for substantial distances, potentially connecting the Atlantic coast with the Western territories through canal systems. Washington himself had invested in the Potomac Company, which aimed to improve navigation on the river. The Potomac location also offered several advantages. It sat roughly at the midpoint between the northern and southern states, addressing concerns about regional bias. The river provided natural beauty and potential for commerce. The surrounding land could be acquired relatively easily from Maryland and Virginia. Perhaps most importantly for Washington, it was close to his beloved Mount Vernon estate. In January 1791, Washington announced his selection of a specific site along the Potomac. The location encompassed land from both Maryland and Virginia, requiring both states to cede territory to the federal government. Maryland ceded approximately 69 square miles, and Virginia ceded about 31 square miles. The total area formed a diamond shape, 10 miles on each side, as specified in the Residence Act. The selected site included several existing settlements. Georgetown, a thriving tobacco port town in Maryland, sat at the northern end of the district. Alexandria, Virginia, an important shipping center, anchored the southern portion. Between them lay mostly agricultural land, including tobacco plantations, small farms, and some marshland along the river. Washington appointed 3 commissioners to oversee the development of the new capital: Thomas Johnson and Daniel Carroll of Maryland, and David Stewart of Virginia. These men would handle the practical matters of land acquisition, surveying, and construction oversight. However, Washington remained deeply involved in all major decisions, visiting the site frequently and corresponding regularly with the commissioners. The selection of the Potomac site was not without controversy. Some critics argued that Washington had chosen the location to benefit his own financial interests in the region. Others questioned whether the site, with its swampy areas and hot, humid summers, was appropriate for a capital city. Northern representatives who had opposed the compromise remained bitter about losing the capital to the south. Despite these objections, work began immediately to transform the rural Potomac landscape into the nation's capital. The project would require not just buildings, but an entirely new city, designed specifically to serve as the seat of government for a republic that aspired to greatness among nations. Pierre Charles L'Enfant Verbashkent Shehirplana. To design the new capital city, President Washington turned to Pierre Charles L'Enfant, a French-born engineer and architect who had served with distinction in the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War. L'Enfant's selection reflected Washington's ambition to create not merely a functional seat of government, but a grand capital that would symbolize the new nation's aspirations and potential. Pierre Charles L'Enfant was born in Paris in 1754, the son of a painter at the French court. He studied art and architecture in France before volunteering for service in the American Revolutionary cause in 1777. L'Enfant served as a military engineer, attaining the rank of major and earning Washington's respect and friendship. After the war, L'Enfant established himself as an architect in New York, where he successfully redesigned Federal Hall for the new government and worked on other notable projects. L'Enfant possessed both the technical skills and the grand vision necessary for designing a capital city. He had studied the great European capitals, particularly Paris and Versailles, and understood how urban design could project power, facilitate governance, and inspire civic pride. When he learned of plans for the new federal city, he wrote directly to Washington in September 1789, volunteering his services and expressing his vision for creating a capital worthy of a great nation. Washington appointed L'Enfant to create the city plan in January 1791. L'Enfant immediately traveled to the site and began surveying the land. He spent weeks walking the terrain, studying its topography, identifying its best features, and envisioning how a great city could emerge from the landscape. His approach combined practical considerations with symbolic and aesthetic concerns. L'Enfant's plan, completed in its essentials by June 1791, was revolutionary in scope and ambition. Rather than following the simple grid pattern common in American cities, he created a Baroque-style plan that combined a grid system with diagonal avenues radiating from important public buildings and open spaces. This design drew inspiration from European capitals, particularly Versailles and Paris, but adapted these concepts to American Republican ideals. The plan's centerpiece was Jenkins Hill, a prominent rise that L'Enfant called a pedestal waiting for a monument. He designated this location for the Congress House, now known as the Capitol. The Capitol would sit at the eastern end of the city, symbolically representing the legislative branch's primacy in the constitutional system. From this point, L'Enfant designed a grand avenue, later named Pennsylvania Avenue, running northwest to the President's House. The President's House site, selected by L'Enfant in consultation with Washington, sat on a ridge overlooking the Potomac River. This location offered both practical advantages: good drainage, fresh breezes, commanding views, and symbolic importance as a statement of executive authority. The distance between the Capitol and the President's House, approximately 1.6 miles, represented the constitutional separation of powers, while the connecting avenues symbolized their necessary cooperation. L'Enfant envisioned both buildings as magnificent structures that would impress foreign visitors and inspire American citizens. He planned broad avenues, spacious public squares, and extensive parks. The major avenues, typically 160 feet wide, would bear the names of the states, symbolically uniting the entire nation in the capital's geography. These diagonal avenues would intersect at circular and rectangular public spaces, creating dramatic vistas and natural gathering places. The plan included a massive public walk, later called the National Mall, extending westward from the Capitol. This grand promenade would serve multiple purposes: a symbolic representation of Republican openness, a practical space for public gatherings, and an aesthetic element providing visual relief and natural beauty. At the mall's western end, where the Washington Monument now stands, L'Enfant planned an equestrian statue of George Washington. L'Enfant's vision extended beyond mere physical layout. He conceived the city as a work of art that would function as a stage for democratic governance. The wide avenues would facilitate commerce and movement while preventing the narrow, maze-like streets that characterized European cities and sometimes enabled revolutionary uprisings. The prominent placement of public buildings would make government visible and accessible. The integration of nature through parks and squares would provide healthful spaces for recreation and reflection. However, L'Enfant's grand vision and imperious personality soon created conflicts. He insisted on maintaining absolute control over all aspects of the plan's implementation and resisted any modifications. When Daniel Carroll, one of the commissioners, began building a house that encroached on one of L'Enfant's planned streets, L'Enfant ordered it demolished without seeking approval from the commissioners or Washington. This high-handed action created a political firestorm. L'Enfant also clashed with the commissioners over practical matters. He refused to produce detailed surveys that could be used to sell lots, arguing that piecemeal development would compromise his comprehensive vision. He insisted on retaining control over all architectural decisions for individual buildings. His perfectionism and unwillingness to compromise delayed the project and frustrated everyone involved. By February 1792, the situation had become untenable. Despite Washington's personal affection for L'Enfant and admiration for his plan, the president reluctantly dismissed him from the project. Washington understood that the city's development required cooperation, compromise, and practical progress, all of which L'Enfant seemed incapable of providing. L'Enfant's departure did not doom his plan. Andrew Ellicott, the surveyor who had assisted L'Enfant, completed the technical work and produced the detailed maps necessary for development. The essential elements of L'Enfant's vision, the grand avenues, the prominent placement of the Capitol and President's House, the symbolic geography, remained intact and guided the city's development. Though L'Enfant never received proper compensation for his work and died in poverty in 1825, his legacy endures. The city that emerged, officially named Washington in honor of the first president, followed his basic plan. More than 2 centuries later, his vision continues to shape the capital, with its grand avenues, impressive vistas, and symbolic geography making Washington, D.C. one of the world's most beautiful and recognizable capital cities. Mimari Yarışma, Başkanın Evi. Nasıl olmalıydı? While Pierre-Charles L'Enfant determined where the president's house would be located within the city plan, the question of what it should look like remained open. President Washington and the commissioners decided to resolve this question through an architectural competition, one of the first such competitions held in the United States. This decision reflected the Republican ideal that important public projects should be open to broad participation rather than awarded through patronage. In March 1792, the commissioners publicly announced a competition for the design of the president's house. The advertisement appeared in newspapers throughout the country, inviting architects and builders to submit plans. The competition offered a prize of $500 or a medal worth that amount, a substantial sum at the time, equivalent to roughly a year's salary for a skilled craftsman. The competition guidelines specified several requirements. The building should be made of brick, as suitable stone was scarce in the area and brick construction was more economical. The structure should be substantial and dignified, suitable for hosting foreign dignitaries and conducting state business, but not monarchical or overly palatial in appearance. This balance reflected a central tension in early American governance: the need to project strength and stability while avoiding the trappings of European royalty that Americans had rebelled against. The guidelines also suggested that the building should accommodate both public and private functions. It would serve as the president's residence, requiring comfortable living quarters for the first family. Simultaneously, it would function as an office building where the president would conduct government business and as a venue for official entertaining. These multiple purposes needed to be integrated into a coherent architectural design. The competition attracted fewer entries than hoped, only 9 formal submissions, though others may have been considered informally. The entries varied wildly in quality and approach. Some proposed modest structures that would have resembled large manor houses. Others suggested grandiose designs that would have been impossibly expensive and politically problematic in their obvious luxury. Among the entries was a design submitted anonymously under the initials AZ. Historians later determined this submission came from Thomas Jefferson, who had deep interests in architecture and had designed his own estate, Monticello. Jefferson's design drew heavily on classical Roman architecture, particularly Andrea Palladio's Villa Rotunda. His plan featured a compact, centralized design with a prominent dome, reflecting Jefferson's preference for classical simplicity and Republican virtue. However, Jefferson's design, while architecturally sophisticated, was not selected. Some sources suggest that Washington found it too small and insufficiently grand for the nation's needs. Others indicate concerns about its practicality for the multiple functions the building needed to serve. Jefferson's submission did influence later architectural developments, particularly his later modifications to the building when he became president. Another notable entry came from Samuel McIntyre, a talented Salem, Massachusetts architect and woodcarver. McIntyre proposed an elegant federal-style design that reflected New England architectural traditions. While well executed, his design may have seemed too regional in character and insufficiently grand in scale for the nation's principal executive building. The competition judges, Washington and the commissioners, found none of the initial submissions entirely satisfactory. The competition deadline passed without a winner being declared. This disappointing result reflected several factors: the limited pool of trained architects in America at the time, the challenging requirements of the commission, and perhaps overly modest prize money for such an important project. The solution came from an unexpected source. James Hoban, an Irish-born architect working in Charleston, South Carolina, learned of the competition after the official deadline had passed. Hoban had not initially submitted a design, but traveled to the new federal city to examine the site and meet with Washington and the commissioners. Whether he submitted his design late or was invited to do so remains somewhat unclear in historical records. But by July 1792, Hoban's proposal had emerged as the favorite. James Hoban's design won Washington's approval for several compelling reasons. His proposal struck the delicate balance the competition sought: substantial and dignified without being ostentatiously palatial, classical in inspiration but adapted to American needs, and practical enough to be actually constructed with available resources and technology. Hoban proposed a three-story structure in the Palladian style, drawing inspiration from Leinster House in Dublin, which Hoban knew from his time in Ireland. The design featured a symmetrical facade with a prominent central section and wings on either side. The main entrance would be marked by a simple portico, providing both aesthetic emphasis and practical shelter. Large windows would provide ample light while projecting an image of openness and transparency in government. The building's proportions reflected classical ideals of harmony and balance. The facade would measure approximately 170 feet in length, creating an impressive presence without overwhelming grandeur. The height would be substantial but not dominating, approximately 60 feet to the roof. The overall impression would be one of restrained elegance and solid permanence, appropriate for a republic that valued stability without monarchical pretension. President Washington appreciated several aspects of Hoban's design. The building would be large enough to accommodate the practical needs of the presidency while hosting official functions. The classical style connected the new republic to the democratic traditions of ancient Greece and Rome, reinforcing American ideals. The design could be constructed in phases if necessary, allowing the building to be occupied even before complete finishing. Perhaps most importantly, Washington trusted Hoban's ability to actually realize the design, to transform drawings into a functioning building. The selection process involved considerable consultation between Washington, the commissioners, and Hoban. Washington, who had practical experience with construction from building and renovating Mount Vernon, engaged directly with technical details. He suggested modifications to Hoban's original design, including changes to room layouts and the addition of features that would improve the building's functionality. One significant modification involved increasing the building's size. Hoban's original design was deemed too small for the dignity of the office and the practical requirements of presidential duties. Washington directed that the dimensions be increased by approximately 1/5, making the structure more imposing and providing more interior space. This change reflected Washington's understanding that the president's house would need to serve expanding functions as the nation grew. On July 16, 1792, the commissioners officially selected Hoban's design. The decision notice praised the plan's elegance and convenience, and authorized Hoban to proceed with detailed architectural drawings and construction plans. Hoban would serve not only as the architect, but also as the principal superintendent of construction, responsible for hiring workers, procuring materials, and managing the day-to-day progress of the building. The approval came with specific instructions about materials and construction methods. The building would be constructed of Aquia Creek sandstone, a light-colored stone quarried about 40 miles south of the site in Virginia. This change from the competition's brick requirement reflected Washington's desire for a more impressive appearance and greater durability. The stone would be cut and dressed by skilled stonemasons before being transported by barge up the Potomac River to the construction site. Hoban's compensation package reflected both the importance of the project and the extended timeline anticipated for construction. He would receive an annual salary of $300 plus a percentage of construction costs, potentially earning substantially more as the project progressed. He would also receive a lot in the new city, encouraging his personal investment in the capital's success. The design approval represented more than an architectural decision. It embodied choices about American identity and values. The classical style connected the new nation to ancient republics, suggesting continuity with historical traditions of democratic governance. The building's scale projected confidence and ambition without royal pretension. The use of American materials and labor, though this labor would include enslaved people, a troubling contradiction, emphasized national self-sufficiency. With the design approved and the architect selected, attention turned to the enormous practical challenge of actually constructing the building. This would require assembling a workforce, establishing systems for quarrying and transporting stone, coordinating numerous skilled trades, and maintaining the project's momentum over what everyone understood would be many years of intensive labor. Understanding James Hoban's background provides essential context for appreciating his design of the President's House and his approach to its construction. Hoban's life story represents the opportunities that the new American Republic offered talented immigrants willing to work hard and apply their skills in a growing nation. James Hoban was born around 1758 in Callan, County Kilkenny, Ireland, into a Catholic family of modest means. His exact birth date remains uncertain, typical of records from that era, particularly for families of limited wealth. Ireland in the mid-18th century offered few opportunities for Catholics, who faced severe legal restrictions under the penal laws. These laws barred Catholics from voting, holding public office, owning certain types of property, and accessing most higher education. Despite these obstacles, Hoban demonstrated exceptional talent and determination. He obtained training in architectural drawing and carpentry, possibly through apprenticeship with a local builder or architect. His skills brought him to the attention of the Dublin Society, an organization promoting arts, agriculture, and industry in Ireland. The society operated one of the few institutions where talented young men, regardless of religious background, could receive architectural training. Hoban studied at the Dublin Society's architectural school, where he learned classical architectural principles, technical drawing, and practical construction methods. His education emphasized Palladian architecture, the dominant style in Georgian Ireland, based on the principles of Andrea Palladio, the 16th century Italian architect who revived and adapted Roman architectural forms. This style emphasized symmetry, proportion, classical orders, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian columns, and harmony between a building and its setting. During his time in Dublin, Hoban would have observed and studied the city's impressive Georgian architecture. Buildings like Leinster House, constructed in 1745 as the Duke of Leinster's townhouse, exemplified the Palladian style applied to large residential structures. Leinster House's design, a central block with subsidiary wings, classical proportions, and restrained ornament, would later influence Hoban's design for the President's House, though the exact extent of this influence remains debated by architectural historians. In the early 1780s, following the American Revolution, Hoban emigrated to the United States. His exact arrival date and initial years in America remain somewhat obscure, but by 1785 he had established himself in Philadelphia, then America's largest city and most important architectural center. Philadelphia offered opportunities for a skilled architect and builder, with substantial construction activity and a wealthy population commissioning impressive buildings. Hoban's work in Philadelphia brought him to the attention of influential patrons. He likely worked on various projects in the city, though specific attributions remain uncertain. His skills in both design and practical construction, he could create elegant architectural drawings and also supervise the actual building process, made him valuable in an era when these skills were often separated. By 1787, Hoban had moved to South Carolina, settling in Charleston. This relocation reflected strategic career calculation. Charleston, one of America's wealthiest cities due to its rice and indigo trade, had suffered significant damage during the Revolutionary War. The city's recovery and rebuilding created substantial opportunities for builders and architects. Additionally, Charleston's wealthy planter class had money to invest in impressive buildings. In Charleston, Hoban quickly established a successful practice. His most significant project was the South Carolina State House, designed in 1790. This commission demonstrated the trust Charleston's elite placed in Hoban's abilities. The State House design reflected Hoban's classical training and his skill at adapting European architectural traditions to American contexts. The building featured Palladian proportions, classical detailing, and practical layouts suitable for governmental functions. Hoban's work on the State House brought him into contact with South Carolina's political leaders, including several who had connections to President Washington and the federal government. When Hoban learned of the competition for the president's house, he recognized an extraordinary opportunity. Success would bring not just financial reward, but also lasting fame as the architect of the nation's most important residence. Hoban's architectural philosophy balanced several concerns. He believed buildings should express appropriate character. Governmental buildings should convey authority and permanence. Residences should suggest comfort and stability. He understood that architecture communicated meaning, not just through explicit symbols, but through proportion, scale, and stylistic choices. He also recognized practical realities. Buildings needed to function well, be constructible with available materials and labor, and be affordable within realistic budgets. This practical idealism made Hoban ideal for the President's House project. He could design a building that would impress foreign visitors and dignify the presidency while remaining achievable to build. He understood both classical architectural theory and the realities of construction sites. He could work effectively with both political leaders like Washington and the skilled craftsmen who would actually build the structure. Hoban's Irish Catholic background also carried symbolic significance. His success represented American meritocracy. In the new republic, talent and hard work could overcome the religious and class barriers that limited opportunities in Europe. That an Irish immigrant designed the President's House symbolized America's openness to people from all nations, though this inclusive ideal coexisted uneasily with the harsh reality that enslaved African Americans would provide much of the labor to construct Hoban's design. The laying of the President's House cornerstone on October 13, 1792, marked the formal beginning of construction, though preparatory work had begun months earlier. This ceremony represented more than a construction milestone. It symbolized the young nation's commitment to establishing a permanent seat of government and its confidence in its ability to undertake such an ambitious project. The cornerstone ceremony followed Masonic tradition, reflecting the importance of Freemasonry in early American society. Many of the nation's leaders, including Washington, were Freemasons, and Masonic lodges provided important social and professional networks. The ceremony involved Masonic ritual and symbolism, consecrating the building with corn, representing abundance, wine, representing joy and health, and oil, representing happiness and prosperity. These ancient ceremonial practices connected the new building to long traditions of marking important construction projects. Historical records provide limited details about the specific ceremony. We know that the cornerstone was laid on the building's southeast corner, following traditional practice. Washington was in the area during this period and may have attended, though some sources suggest his presence is uncertain. Whether or not Washington personally participated, the ceremony attracted attention and represented an important moment in the capital's development. Before the cornerstone ceremony, months of preparatory work had already occurred. The building site required substantial clearing and grading. The location, while well drained on a ridge above the Potomac, still needed earthwork to create proper foundations and establish drainage patterns that would direct water away from the building. Workers cleared trees and vegetation, removed stumps, and leveled the ground according to Hoban's specifications. Foundation work began in summer 1792. The foundation would need to support an enormous weight. The completed building would contain thousands of tons of stone, while withstanding the seasonal freeze-thaw cycles that could crack and destabilize structures. Hoban designed foundations using the best practices of the era, deep trenches filled with stone and mortar, creating solid platforms for the walls above. Workers excavated foundation trenches to a depth of approximately 8 feet in some locations, depending on the underlying soil conditions. The trenches extended beyond the building's footprint to ensure stability. Workers then filled these trenches with rough stone, packing the stones tightly and filling gaps with mortar. This foundation work required enormous quantities of stone, much of it field stone collected from the surrounding area, as well as large amounts of lime for mortar. Lime production represented a significant undertaking in itself. Lime, essential for mortar and plaster, was produced by heating limestone in kilns until it calcined, then slaking the resulting quicklime with water to produce workable mortar. The project established lime kilns near the construction site, requiring workers to gather fuel wood, tend fires, and manage the chemical processes involved in lime production. The smell of lime kilns became a familiar feature of the early federal city. As foundation work progressed through late 1792 and into 1793, other preparatory activities occurred simultaneously. The quarries at Aquia Creek, about 40 miles south, began producing cut stone for the building's walls. Quarrymen used hand tools, chisels, hammers, wedges, and saws to extract large blocks of sandstone from the quarry face. This labor-intensive process required skill and experience to split stone along its natural grain, producing blocks that could be shaped into building stones. Once extracted, the rough stone blocks required further shaping. Stone cutters trimmed the blocks to approximate dimensions at the quarry, reducing the weight that would need to be transported. They couldn't complete the final finishing at the quarry because precise dimensions could only be determined as construction progressed, but reducing the blocks to rough dimensions saved significant transportation costs. Transportation from quarry to construction site presented major logistical challenges. The Potomac River provided the only practical route for moving the heavy stone. The project required specially constructed barges capable of carrying multiple tons of stone. These barges would be loaded at landings near the quarry, floated or towed up the Potomac to Georgetown, or directly to landings near the construction site, then unloaded. Weather, river conditions, and seasonal variations in water levels all affected this transportation system. The quarrying and transportation operations required their own workforce separate from the construction site itself. Quarrymen, who might be enslaved, free black or white workers, extracted and shaped the stone. Watermen operated the barges. Workers at landings loaded and unloaded cargo. This extended supply chain needed coordination to ensure stone arrived at the construction site when needed, in quantities sufficient to keep masons working, but not in such excess that it cluttered the site or required secure storage. By 1794, foundation work was largely complete, and the walls began rising above ground level. This phase of construction required even more skilled labor than the foundation work. Stone masons shaped the Aquia Creek sandstone into blocks with flat faces and square edges that would fit tightly together. The quality of stone cutting directly affected the building's appearance and structural integrity. Poorly cut stone would leave gaps requiring excessive mortar, weakening walls and creating an unattractive appearance. The construction process followed traditional load-bearing masonry techniques. Exterior walls would be built of solid stone, approximately 3 feet thick at the base, providing the strength to support the building's weight. As walls rose, their thickness would gradually decrease, maintaining strength while reducing weight and material costs at higher levels. Interior walls would use brick, which was less expensive than stone, easier to work, and adequate for structural purposes since exterior walls carried most loads. Work proceeded relatively slowly by modern standards, but steadily given the era's technology and labor systems. In a typical construction season, spring through fall as winter weather made some work impractical, walls might rise 6 to 10 feet, requiring thousands of cubic feet of stone and uncountable hours of skilled labor. Each stone needed to be individually cut, fitted, checked for proper alignment, and set in mortar. Masons used plumb lines and levels to ensure walls remained vertical and corners stayed true. The workforce assembled for this massive project reflected the complex social and economic realities of early America. Free-skilled workers, including some earning wages that would have seemed substantial to European artisans, worked alongside enslaved people who received nothing beyond minimal food, shelter, and clothing. This labor system requires careful examination to understand both the building's construction and the profound moral contradictions embedded in its foundations. The construction of the President's House involved one of the most troubling paradoxes in American history, a monument to democratic government designed to house the elected leader of a republic founded on principles of liberty and equality, was built substantially by enslaved human beings who enjoyed neither liberty nor equality. Understanding this reality is essential to honestly confronting the building's history and the nation's founding contradictions. The workforce that constructed the President's House comprised several distinct categories of laborers, each working under different conditions and compensations. These categories included hired free white artisans and laborers, hired free black workers, enslaved people hired out by their enslavers, and enslaved people owned directly by the federal government for the project. Each group's experience differed dramatically, yet all contributed essential labor to the building's construction. Free white skilled workers commanded the highest wages and held the most prestigious positions. Master stonemasons, carpenters, plasterers, and other highly skilled craftsmen often came from Europe, particularly Scotland, which had strong stonemasonry traditions. These men brought specialized knowledge and commanded daily wages of $1 to $2 plus food and lodging, substantial compensation at a time when unskilled labor might earn 50 cents daily or less. James Hoban worked actively to recruit skilled European craftsmen, particularly from Scotland and Ireland. He advertised in newspapers, offering good wages and promising steady employment on a prestigious project. Some skilled workers emigrated specifically to work on the federal buildings, seeing opportunity in the new capital. These free craftsmen held supervisory roles, trained less skilled workers, handled the most demanding technical tasks, and typically worked shorter hours than laborers performing heavy physical work. Free black workers also contributed to the construction, though they faced discrimination in pay and opportunities compared to white workers performing similar tasks. Free blacks in the early republic occupied an uncertain legal and social position. They possessed legal freedom but faced severe restrictions on their rights and activities. In the workforce, free black skilled workers might earn 50 to 75% of what white workers received for equivalent work, reflecting racial prejudices that deemed their labor less valuable regardless of actual skill or productivity. Despite these barriers, free black workers found construction work relatively accessible compared to other occupations. The massive scale of building the new Capitol created labor demand that overcomes some discriminatory hiring practices. Free black carpenters, laborers, and carters worked alongside others, contributing skills and physical effort while enduring unequal treatment and compensation. The majority of workers on the President's House project, particularly those performing heavy physical labor, were enslaved people. They cleared land, dug foundations, moved earth, hauled materials, cut and moved stone, produced bricks, prepared lime, and performed countless other tasks requiring strength, endurance, and skill rather than highly specialized training. Some enslaved workers also possessed specialized skills: carpentry, masonry, ironwork, developed through apprenticeship or experience. The federal government acquired enslaved labor through two primary mechanisms. First, the commissioners hired enslaved workers from nearby slaveholders, paying the enslavers, not the enslaved workers themselves, an annual hiring fee. This practice, common in the South, allowed enslavers to profit from people they held in bondage without losing ownership. Hired enslaved workers might be used for a construction season or longer, depending on contractual arrangements between the government and the enslaver. Second, the federal government purchased approximately 40 enslaved people specifically for construction work on federal buildings. This purchase, authorized by the commissioners, reflected the economic calculation that buying workers would be cheaper than repeatedly hiring them over the multi-year construction period. These individuals, whose names we know from payroll records made out to their enslavers, became federal property, human beings owned by the government of a nation that proclaimed all men created equal. Historical records preserve some details about these enslaved workers. Payroll records show payments to enslavers for hiring out individuals with names like Abraham, Ben, Daniel, and Peter. These fragmentary documentary traces represent real human beings with lives, families, hopes, and sufferings largely lost to history. They worked long hours in difficult conditions, building a structure they would never inhabit, creating symbols of liberty they would never enjoy. The working conditions for enslaved laborers were harsh. They typically worked from dawn to dusk, 6 days per week during construction seasons. The work was physically demanding and often dangerous, moving heavy stones, working at heights on scaffolding, operating machinery and tools, and performing repetitive heavy labor caused injuries. Unlike free workers who could refuse unsafe conditions or seek other employment, enslaved workers had no such options. They worked where directed, regardless of danger or difficulty. Housing for workers reflected the social hierarchies of the era. Free skilled white workers might secure boarding in Georgetown or in the small structures appearing in the developing federal city. Free black workers faced more limited housing options due to discrimination, but still typically secured their own lodging. Enslaved workers lived in temporary quarters near the construction site, simple structures offering minimal shelter and privacy, housing multiple workers in cramped conditions. Food provided to workers similarly varied by status. Free workers often received food allowances or meals as part of their compensation packages, with quality and quantity reflecting their wage rates and positions. Enslaved workers received basic rations, typically cornmeal, salt pork or fish, and perhaps occasional vegetables. These rations provided calories sufficient for heavy labor but little else, contributing to poor health and high mortality rates among enslaved populations. The social dynamics on the construction site reflected broader patterns of race and slavery in early America. Free white skilled workers supervised and directed others, including enslaved workers. Free black workers occupied an intermediate position, sometimes directing enslaved workers in specific tasks, but always subordinate to white authority. Enslaved workers occupied the bottom of this hierarchy, subject to direction, discipline, and punishment by overseers or supervisors. This workforce system created profound moral contradictions. The men directing the project, Washington, the commissioners, Hoban, participated in a system of slavery while simultaneously building institutions of democratic government. Washington himself was a major slaveholder, owning more than 300 people at Mount Vernon. He understood slavery's injustice. He had written about hoping for slavery's abolition, yet he remained a slaveholder and authorized the use of enslaved labor for the president's house. These contradictions were not invisible to contemporaries. Abolitionists and anti-slavery advocates pointed to the hypocrisy of building freedom's monuments with slave labor. Some northern states had begun gradual abolition programs. Quakers and others organized opposition to slavery based on religious and moral principles. Yet the economic and political power of slavery proved too strong. The new nation compromised its founding principles, accepting slavery's continuation to maintain unity between northern and southern states. The use of enslaved labor on the president's house had lasting consequences beyond the building itself. It normalized slavery's presence in the nation's capital and associated slavery with federal authority. It demonstrated that the federal government would not challenge slavery even in territories under direct federal control. It sent powerful symbolic messages about whose labor built America and whose contributions would be valued and remembered. Modern efforts to acknowledge this history have attempted partial reckoning. The White House Historical Association and other organizations have researched and published information about enslaved workers' contributions. Educational programs discuss this history with school groups and tourists. Yet full acknowledgement remains challenging. How do we adequately recognize and honor people whose names we barely know, whose stories remain largely untold, whose contributions were forced rather than freely given? As foundation work completed in 1793 and 1794, the President's House walls began their steady rise above ground. This phase of construction represented the project's most visible progress, transforming Hoban's designs from paper into three-dimensional reality. It also represented the period of most intensive labor, requiring coordination of numerous workers, constant supplies of materials, and sustained attention to quality and detail. The exterior walls would be constructed of Aquia Creek sandstone throughout, as specified in Hoban's plans and Washington's directives. This stone, a light grayish color that would later be painted white, possessed several favorable qualities. It was relatively soft when first quarried, making it easier to cut and shape than harder stones. But it hardened upon exposure to air, increasing its durability. The stone could be worked to create smooth surfaces and precise edges necessary for quality masonry. Stone cutting was skilled, demanding work requiring years of training. Master masons marked each block with measurements and cutting lines, using specialized tools to create the desired shapes. The process was both art and craft. Stones had to fit together tightly while maintaining structural strength and creating aesthetically pleasing patterns. Face stones, which would be visible on the building's exterior, received special attention to ensure smooth surfaces and precise dimensions. The stones were assembled using a technique called ashlar masonry, where carefully cut stones of relatively uniform size and shape are laid in regular courses with thin mortar joints. This technique, associated with high-quality construction, created walls that were both strong and attractive. The thin mortar joints minimized the mortar visible between stones, emphasizing the stone itself and creating a refined appearance appropriate for an important public building. Wall construction proceeded in horizontal layers called courses. Masons laid a course of stones around the building's perimeter, ensuring they remained level and properly aligned. Once a complete course was set and the mortar had begun to harden, work began on the next course above. This methodical process ensured that loads distributed evenly and walls rose uniformly, preventing the structural problems that could result from building one section too far ahead of others. The corners of the building received particular attention. Cornerstones, called quoins, needed to be especially well cut and carefully placed because they were visible on two faces and had to maintain true 90-degree angles. The corners also carried significant structural loads, transferring weight from above down through the foundation. Master masons personally supervised corner work, ensuring the precision essential to the entire structure's integrity. As walls rose, openings for windows and doors had to be formed. This required careful planning and skilled execution. Stone lintels, horizontal supporting members above openings, had to be properly sized and placed to carry the weight of masonry above them without cracking or failing. Lintels were among the largest individual stones in the structure, sometimes weighing hundreds of pounds and requiring multiple workers with special equipment to lift and position them accurately. The building's scale required specialized equipment for moving and lifting heavy materials. Construction sites used wooden cranes, pulley systems, and inclined ramps to raise stones and other materials to working heights. These devices, operated by human or animal power, represented the era's most advanced construction technology. Operating this equipment required skill and coordination. Mistakes could damage materials or injure workers. Material delivery needed careful coordination to maintain construction momentum. Stone from Aquia Creek arrived by barge, weather and river conditions permitting. Lime for mortar required continuous production at on-site kilns. Bricks for interior walls came from local brick yards, some operating specifically to supply federal construction. Timber for scaffolding, framing, and temporary structures came from local forests. Sand for mortar came from nearby sources. Each material stream required management, transportation, storage, and distribution to work sites. Quality control was an ongoing concern. James Hoban personally inspected work regularly, checking that stones were properly cut and set, that walls remained plumb and level, and that workmanship met standards. The commissioners also conducted periodic inspections, sometimes bringing concerns to Hoban's attention. President Washington, when visiting the site, often examined the work closely, drawing on his own building experience to assess quality. Weather significantly affected construction progress. Work proceeded most rapidly during spring, summer, and fall, when days were long and weather generally favorable. Winter brought challenges. Freezing temperatures could damage mortar before it properly cured. Short days reduced working hours. Snow and ice made sites dangerous and some tasks impossible. Typically, heavy construction slowed or stopped during the coldest months, with workers focusing on tasks that could be done indoors or on preparatory work for the next building season. The construction timeline continually slipped behind initial projections. Early estimates had suggested the building might be ready for occupancy by 1797 or 1798. As work progressed, the complexity and scale became evident. The walls alone required far more time than initially expected. By 1796, it was clear that completion would extend beyond Washington's presidency. He would leave office without ever occupying the building he had worked so hard to create. Financial pressures complicated construction management. The project was funded through lot sales in the federal city, but these sales proceeded slowly. Lot buyers were scarce, and many who did purchase lots failed to make full payment or delayed building on their property. This left the project chronically short of funds, forcing the commissioners to borrow money and sometimes delay paying workers, creating tensions and workforce problems. Despite these challenges, the walls steadily rose. By 1795, they had reached the second floor. By 1796, the structure was approaching its full height. The building's form became clear. The central block with its elegant proportions, the symmetrical windows, the scale that projected dignity without ostentation. Visitors to the site could now envision the completed structure and understand the ambitious vision driving the project. The rising walls represented more than construction progress. They symbolized national permanence and commitment. The fact that this building was actually being constructed, despite financial problems, political controversies, and technical challenges, demonstrated that the United States would endure, that the federal government would establish itself in its own capital, and that the Republican experiment would continue. Each stone added to the walls represented a small but tangible vote of confidence in the nation's future. While much of the enslaved labor on the president's house involved heavy physical work, moving earth and stone, hauling materials, digging foundations, many enslaved workers possessed specialized skills that were essential to the building's construction. These skilled enslaved craftsmen performed work requiring training, experience, and expertise. yet they received no compensation beyond basic survival necessities and no recognition for their contributions beyond fragmentary mentions in payment records. Enslaved carpenters worked throughout the construction process. Carpentry was essential for multiple aspects of the project: building scaffolding that allowed masons to work at height, creating wooden forms and supports used in masonry work, constructing temporary shelters and workshops, fabricating the building's interior wooden elements including floors, stairs, window frames, and door frames, and creating the roof structure that would top the building. Some enslaved carpenters possessed skills equivalent to free master carpenters. They could read architectural drawings, translate plans into three-dimensional wooden structures, joint timber precisely, and direct less skilled workers in completing projects. The fact that these skilled artisans were enslaved reflected not any lack of ability, but only the accident of birth and the legal fiction that one human being could own another. Historical records document specific enslaved carpenters by name in connection with the president's house construction. Men like Peter, mentioned in payment records, contributed specialized labor that free workers would have been paid substantial wages to perform. Yet Peter and others like him received nothing. Their enslavers received payment for hiring them out. The enslaved workers themselves were treated as tools or animals, their labor extracted without compensation or recognition. Enslaved blacksmiths also contributed essential skills. Blacksmiths created and repaired the iron tools used throughout construction: chisels, hammers, wedges, nails, hinges, and countless other items. They shod horses and repaired carts used for transportation. They fabricated structural ironwork, including the iron cramps and ties that helped secure masonry. They manufactured specialized items needed for specific construction tasks. Blacksmithing required considerable knowledge and skill. A blacksmith had to understand metal properties, control fire temperatures, shape heated metal through hammering and bending, and create products that met precise specifications for size and strength. Enslaved blacksmiths working on the president's house possessed these skills, developed through years of training and practice, yet they worked under the complete control of others, with no claim to their labor's fruits. Enslaved stonecutters and masons represented perhaps the highest level of skilled enslaved labor on the project. Masonry was considered one of the most skilled construction trades, requiring geometric understanding, precision, and aesthetic judgment. While the master masons who designed and supervised the most important work were free white craftsmen, enslaved workers performed substantial amounts of actual stone cutting and laying. The stone working process involved multiple stages. Rough blocks from the quarry had to be trimmed and shaped to precise dimensions. Faces had to be smoothed and squared. Stones had to be test-fitted and adjusted. Each stone required individual attention and skilled work. Enslaved stone cutters performed much of this repetitive but demanding labor, working under the direction of master masons, but executing the actual cutting and shaping. Some enslaved workers developed such skill in stone cutting that they could handle complex work with minimal supervision. They understood how to read stone's grain, how to use tools effectively, and how to achieve the smooth faces and precise edges that quality masonry required. Their work was indistinguishable from that of free stone cutters, except for the fundamental distinction that they received no wages and no freedom. The training of enslaved, skilled workers reveals another dimension of slavery's injustice. Many enslaved craftsmen learned their skills through apprenticeship to master craftsmen, just as free apprentices did. They spent years learning their trades, developing expertise through practice and instruction. But while free apprentices could eventually become master craftsmen, establish their own businesses, and enjoy the economic and social benefits of their skills, enslaved apprentices remained enslaved. Their skills increased their monetary value to their enslavers, but brought them no personal benefit beyond possibly slightly better treatment. The organization of work on the construction site reflected the complex interplay of skill, race, and slavery. Free white master craftsmen supervised and directed work, making key decisions and handling the most prestigious and visible tasks. Free white skilled workers performed substantial portions of the actual construction under the master's direction. Free black workers occupied intermediate positions, possessing skills but facing discrimination that limited their opportunities. Enslaved workers, regardless of skill level, remained under the complete control of others, their labor directed and their contributions uncompensated. This system was economically rational from the enslaver's perspective. Enslaved skilled workers provided labor at minimal cost: food, basic shelter, and simple clothing. While hiring or purchasing enslaved workers required capital outlay to the enslaver, the absence of wages made enslaved labor significantly cheaper than hiring free workers for the same tasks. This cost advantage was especially significant for a project like the President's House, which faced chronic funding shortfalls. However, the economic logic that made enslaved labor attractive to those in power cannot obscure the profound moral wrong it represented. Enslaved workers, skilled or unskilled, were human beings denied the most fundamental rights and dignities. They could not refuse work, negotiate conditions, seek other employment, or enjoy the fruits of their labor. They could be bought and sold, separated from families, punished for any resistance, and worked according to their enslavers' interests with no regard for their own wishes or well-being. The contributions of enslaved skilled workers to the President's House represented stolen labor and stolen recognition. When the building was completed and praised, credit went to James Hoban and other free professionals. The enslaved carpenters, blacksmiths, masons, and others who transformed raw materials into the actual structure through skilled labor received no acknowledgement. Their names appeared only in payment records as property that earned money for enslavers. Modern efforts to recognize these contributions face challenges. The historical record is fragmentary. We know some names from payment records, but many enslaved workers remain anonymous. We know they performed essential work, but detailed descriptions of individual contributions are rare. We know they possessed considerable skills, but we lack the biographical details that would let us fully appreciate their lives and abilities. Despite these documentary limitations, we must acknowledge what we do know. The President's House, like many important buildings in early America, was constructed substantially by enslaved people. Their labor, skill, and suffering are embedded in the structure's foundations and walls. Any honest accounting of the building's history must include their stories, incomplete as they are, and recognize both their crucial contributions and the injustice of the system that extracted their labor while denying their humanity. While the exterior walls were rising through the mid-1790s, James Hoban was simultaneously developing detailed plans for the building's interior. The interior design needed to accommodate the President's House's multiple functions, serving as a private residence for the first family, providing office space for the President and his staff, and offering venues for official entertaining and ceremonies. Balancing these needs within a finite space required thoughtful planning and creative design solutions. The building's floor plan reflected the classical principles that guided Hoban's overall design. Symmetry governed the layout, with rooms arranged in balanced patterns around central axes. This symmetry served both aesthetic and practical purposes. Aesthetically, it created harmony and order, qualities valued in classical architecture. Practically, it allowed the building to project equal importance in all directions rather than privileging one facade over others. The ground floor, at grade level on the north side but elevated on the south due to the sloping site, was designated for utility functions and services. This level would contain kitchens, storage rooms, workspaces for servants, and mechanical systems. The decision to locate these functions below the main floor reflected both practical considerations, heat from kitchens rising to warm rooms above, reduced disturbance from service activities, and social hierarchies, separating service functions from entertaining and living spaces. The state floor, one level above the ground floor, would be the building's primary public level. This floor would contain the large reception rooms where the president would host formal entertainments, receive dignitaries, and conduct official ceremonies. The layout devoted most of the state floor to these public functions, creating an enfilade, a suite of rooms aligned so that doors opened along a straight axis, creating dramatic vistas and facilitating movement during large gatherings. The East Room, occupying much of the eastern end of the state floor, was designed as the largest public space. This grand reception hall would accommodate the biggest events, receptions, ceremonies, and entertaining. Hoban designed it with high ceilings, large windows providing ample light, and proportions that would allow for impressive decoration while maintaining classical harmony. The East Room's scale reflected the presidency's importance and the need for spaces that could accommodate substantial crowds.